All right, so first of all, welcome everyone to our webinar. Today, our webinar topic would be unlocking the Ivy League and athlete college admissions and beyond. And some of the key questions that we are going to cover are Harvard's athlete admission rate is 5+ times higher than general admissions rate. Why? And also, what are the differences between 3 divisions in NCAA? What are the admissions criteria for top schools in the US? And then statistically, what are the best sports to engage in? And how do athletes who get admitted into top schools do in high school? All right. And so today we're going to go through all of these little points. So we're going to look at the college application for athletes. We're going to interpret the latest college and D1 admissions data. And then we're going to look at the admissions criteria for Ivy League schools. And then statistically, what are the top 3 sports for men and for women to help you get into a good college? And last but not least, we're going to look at some real life cases of the athletes who are actually admitted into Ivy League schools. Like, what do they do in high school and how good should you be to get into top universities? All right. But to start off, like, who am I? All right. So my name is Artemis Huang. I've taught in Peking University and Boston University. I have 5 years of teaching experience, having taught over 800 students. And right now I work in Think Academy, Silicon Valley. And an important reason why I wanted to do this athlete admissions webinar series is because I've encountered a lot of student athletes over my years of teaching experience, and they've told me a lot about how they did, how they were able to balance their professional life as an athlete and also their studies. And also they talked to me a lot about how they applied for universities, how they made their decisions, how they communicated with coaches, etc. And so, yeah, I just found that it's very important that we all get prepared if you engage in sports, if you love sports, and if you want to prepare yourself for a life as a student athlete. What are some important information that you need to keep in mind as you go along the way to become a college athlete? All right, and before we begin, I would like to ask our participants, do you have you read any articles on Think Academy about sports admissions, or do you play any sports? What would you like to know most about? Any ideas? Oh, I see volleyball. Someone says volleyball. Yeah, swimming. Oh, swimming seems like a huge sport. There's also tennis, golf, a lot of golfs, and crew and baseball, skating, badminton, gymnastics. I also see it. Yeah, and there's basketball and kung fu. And skating, soccer. Yeah, and I see some sports that we're going to cover today in this webinar, actually. Yeah, we're going to mention those. And then there's fencing. Yeah, there's a lot of sports that you can name, right? All right. And so to begin with, know that you guys engage in a lot of sports, but to proceed as a student athlete, what do you have to know? You have to know the NCAA and its divisions. This is the basic information for any student athlete. All right, so what is the NCAA? The NCAA's full name is the National Collegiate Athletic Association. It has over 1,100 schools in total over the whole nation. And then it serves more than 500,000 college student athletes in total. So it organizes events, it organizes games and competitions and sports conventions for athletes to participate in. The NCAA categorizes schools into 3 divisions, divisions 1, 2, and 3. And so Division 1 and Division 2 are usually larger schools with more resources and also more sports teams, while Division 3 usually are smaller and have fewer teams. And so one question I get a lot is, does that mean that D3 schools are bad? And so the short answer is no, not necessarily. So D3 schools are in that category mainly because these schools are smaller in the student body size, and also it has fewer sports teams. And so, for example, there are some D3 schools that are very renowned academically and also sports-wise, such as the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and also Caltech. And so you could see that D3 schools are just smaller schools, but they can also be very renowned. All right. And then here you can take a look at some basic information of the 3 divisions. And so looking at the number of teams, we can see that D2 schools have the fewest number of teams in total. It has less than 5,000 teams. And for D1 schools, that's over 6,000, and D3, that's over 8,000. And then another huge difference is in the athletic scholarship. And so for D1 schools, they have $2.85 billion of scholarships in total. And then D2 schools only have $780 million, while D3 school has completely no athletic scholarship offered. But then although D1 school has a huge amount of scholarship, it's important to note that, not all Division 1 schools have scholarships. And so, for example, the Ivy League schools do not offer any student athletic scholarships, and it only offers academic-based scholarship and also need-based financial aid. All right. And then going deeper into each division, we can look at some statistics and also some characteristics of each division. So Division 1 has around 360 schools in total, and it has a median undergraduate enrollment size of 8,960 people. And so you can see that Division 1, you can see later, Division 1 compared with D2 and D3 has the largest undergraduate enrollment size. And so it has the biggest schools are in Division 1. And because of the big student body, the students who are athletes in the whole school, the percentage is lower. You can find 1 athlete in 23 students, but then it actually has a lot of the student athletes. It has 37% of all of the student athletes in NCAA. All right, and then you can look at these bullet points. These are some characteristics of D1 schools. So for example, D1 has the top performing college athletes. It has the widest range of sports available. The schools have the largest budget and also better sports facilities typically. And then D1 also hosts prestigious sports conferences such as the Southeastern Conference, the Atlantic Coast, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. So some of you might have heard these names. They're all D1 schools. All right. And then Division 2, looking at the the picture over here, Division 2 is the smallest size. It only has a little bit over 300 schools in total. And then the median undergraduate enrollment number is 2,428 people. And so you can see that the schools are generally smaller than D1. And then it has the fewest total number of athletes in the NCAA. So it has 25% of the student athletes in the association. And then you can find 1 student athlete in 10 students in Division 2 schools. All right, and so some characteristics of D2. So usually the schools in D2 are smaller size than D1. D2 has the fewest number of schools, and D2 usually only gives out partial scholarships to its athletes. All right, and now now let's look at Division 3. So D3 is the largest division. It has like 440 schools or so in the whole division. The median undergraduate enrollment size is 1,751. And so you can see that D3 schools are the smallest. But it has the most percentage of student athletes in the NCAA. So there's like around almost 40% of the student athletes in the association is in D3. And so you can find one student athlete and 4 students in D3 schools. And something important to note is that D3 does not offer any athletic scholarships. And one question I get a lot is, does that mean that D3 schools do not provide any financial support to its students? The answer is no. So most of the students, 80% in fact, of the student athletes get academic scholarships for their high grades, either in high school GPA, in school grades, or SAT, ACT scores, and or they would get need-based financial aid. So usually the need-based financial aid would come from filling out the FAFSA paperwork. So if your family contribution does not cover your college expenses, then the schools would sometimes provide needs-based financial aid for you to complete your college career. All right. And then something important to note is that D1 and D2 has very strict high school academic requirements. And so here you can see some of the courses required by the NCAA. And so for Division 1, if you want to apply, you have to complete 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 2 years natural physical science, and 1 year additional class within the English, math, and natural physical science realm. And then you also need 2 years of social science and then 4 years of additional courses. And then Division 2 shares a very similar academic plan. So you would need to take 3 years of English, 2 years of math, 2 years natural physical science, 3 years additional courses between these 3, and then 2 years social science, and then the additional courses. And so if you compare Division 1 and Division 2 requirements, you can see they are highly similar. So basically, Division 2 just takes 1 year of required English and 1 year of required math, and then put it in the additional section that you still have to choose between English, math, and natural physical science. So there's not actually that many options to choose from. So a lot of people just complete the requirements by the Division 1 schools. And because once you complete Division 1 requirement, you would qualify for both D1 and D2. And they're not that different after all. All right, and D1, D2 schools also have some GPA requirements. So D1 requires a minimum 2.3 GPA in high school out of 4, and D2 schools require a minimum 2.2 GPA. And so here you can see the GPA requirements and the academic plans of requirement are very similar between D1 and D2. So athletes usually just try to aim for passing the D1 requirement in order to qualify for applying to D1 and D2 schools. All right. And the NCAA also has some recommended high school academic timeline for all prospective student athletes. So in 9th grade, you would need to start planning ahead. And so you would need to plan for your whole, like this curriculum right here. You would need to plan ahead and ask your school counselor what classes in your high school qualify for those required core courses for the student athletes, and then plan how to complete these courses by the end of your 11th grade. And then an important action you should take by 10th grade is register. So you would need to register for a profile on the NCAA Eligibility Center website. And so on the profile, you would have your sports experience, all your grades and scores and competitions. And then it's also very important for you to ask your school counselor to upload your school transcripts onto the Eligibility Center every year. Yeah, so basically you would want to register for a profile and keep it updated. And then in 11th grade, An important thing you should do is you should study and take the SAT and ACT tests. And so in 11th grade, you would also start preparing for college admissions, and then start looking for your colleges and then get in touch with the coaches. And then in 12th grade, it's the year when you graduate. So you should request for your final amateurism certification. You should send your final proof of graduation to both the college institutions and also the eligibility centers, and just get prepared to graduate and start your college life. All right. And so one question I get a lot is, like, do athletes still need to apply for college? And so the answer is yes. So everything that non-athletes do, athletes also need to do, such as you still need to take the ACT or SAT. You still need to fill out and send college applications to all of the institutions. You also still need to fill out and submit your FAFSA paperwork in order to qualify for need-based financial aid. All right, but then for athletes, you have to take extra steps, such as you need to register for the eligibility centers for NCAA and or NAIA. You need to request your final amateurism certification, and you also need to send your final proof of graduation, not only to the colleges, but also to the eligibility centers. And so it's very important for student athletes to keep on track of the times and dates of college application, because you have like a lot more work to do compared to non-athletes. All right. And then one question that people ask me a lot is, why do colleges just love athletes? Like, why do they admit so many athletes? All right, so when you look at the athlete acceptance rate, here you can see all of the Ivy League schools. Like, you can see, like, Ivy League schools, athletes can make up to 21% of college student body, like in Dartmouth, and also like the 20% in Princeton. So you can see the athletes make up a huge percentage of in Ivy League schools. And then outside of the Ivy League schools, like some other schools can admit even more student athletes. Like Williams College has 36% of the students being athletes, and Colby College, it's 35%. So you can see athletes make up a very big portion of higher institutions. And so why is that? Like, the first important reason is Olympic honor. So in the US Olympics team, 75% of the athletes come from the NCAA. And then in 2020, in the Tokyo Olympics, in the 39 American gold medalists, half of them were college athletes. And so here you can see college athletes and the NCAA play a very big role in the United States participation in the Olympics. And then here you can see a chart of like all of the top performing universities in the Olympics, how many gold, silver, bronze medals they've gotten. And then USC, University of Southern California, and Stanford University has like the most gold medals in the Olympics history. They have like 153. Yeah, and then other universities that are top performing include UCLA, UC Berkeley, Yale University, Harvard University, etc. And so here you can see these are like really well-known universities that do very well academically, and they're also doing very well in the Olympics. And the second major reason is personality and character. So many universities and many famous companies believe that sports can form and shape a person's personality. And so some of the keywords associated to sports and sport athletes include leadership, teamwork, coachability, mental toughness, handling pressure, goal-oriented, good work ethic, adaptability, effective communicator, and time management. And so you can see all of these characters, self-discipline, teamwork, like all of these personalities and personal attributes are associated with athletes. And that's why universities and companies alike really like to admit or hire past athletes. All right. And then now let's take a look at the admissions criteria of top schools. Okay, so taking Harvard as an example. So athletes with who also have high academic scores has an acceptance rate of 83%. And then compared to non-athlete who has the same academic scores, the possibility is just 16%. So here you can see if you have good grades, athletes have like more than 5 times the possibility to get admitted into Harvard compared to non-athletes. And then not to mention the general acceptance rate at Harvard is always under 5%. Last year, it was 3.2. And so here you can see from 3.2 to 83%, like there are 2 things needed. So first, you need to have good academic grades. And also, like you should have some sports skills and be athletes. All right, and then looking at the standardized test scores of admitted students at Harvard. So the overall class of 2025 SAT average was 1,494. For athletes who got admitted into Harvard, that's 1,397. And then for non-athletes, that's 1,501. And so here you can see, compared to non-athletes, athletes score differ from them by around 100 points. All right, but then looking at the D1 average SAT score, the average score is 1,070. So here you can see from the D1 average, a little bit over 1,000, to the Harvard athletes average of almost 1,400, there is still a pretty big gap. And so like if you want to get into top university, you should still keep up with your schoolwork. All right. And now let's take a look at the statistics, the admission statistics. And then statistically, what are the like top 3 sports for men and for women to engage in? And so here you can see there's a chart. And then in the rows, there are like the different sports that are accepted and like that the NCAA has in its systems. And then the columns, the first column is the total number of high school boy athletes in the US we have in each sport. And then the second column is the total number of college athletes. And then the third column is the total number of D1 college athletes. And then we use the number of high school athletes and the number of college athletes to calculate how many percent, like what the percentage of the high school athletes are still playing in college in the same sport. And also what percentage of the high school athletes are playing in NCAA D1 schools. And then here, these are just like 1 out of 7 would get into college, and then 1 out of 32 would get into college. And so looking at the chart in total, so looking at the total percentage, a little bit over 8% of the high school boys athletes would continue their sport in college, and then less than 2% would continue in D1 rosters. And then looking at men's top 3. So men's top 3 are lacrosse, baseball, and ice hockey. And then looking at each of them. So number 1 is lacrosse. So lacrosse has the highest chance of getting into college and also the highest chance of getting into D1 schools compared with other sports. It has the 1.9 times the national average for high school boys to enter college, and then 1.65 times the national average to enter D1 roster. And so looking at a typical team size of 22 to 28, the top performing 3 to 4 players on each high school team would have a high chance of continuing the sport in college. And then some universities that have men's lacrosse teams include Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Duke, Dartmouth, and Cornell. So some really renowned universities. All right. And then the number 2 for men's and for boys is baseball. So something important to note is that baseball has the most school choices among the top 3 sports. It has 1,707 men's varsity teams in the whole country. And then, but it's very important to note as well that it does not have a significant advantage if you want to apply for D1 roster. So like for baseball, the percentage of high school players who are continuing their sport in D1 schools is just 1.1 times the national average. And so the advantage is not very significant. And so if your end goal is to enter college and have more schools to choose from, then baseball would be a good option. But then if your goal is simply to apply for D1 schools, then baseball does not give you like much higher chances than other sports. All right, and number 3 would be ice hockey. So for ice hockey, the chances are pretty good. Like you have a over 10% chance of entering college, and then almost 2.5% chance of playing in D1. But then something important to consider is that ice hockey has very limited school choices, because ice hockey is a sport that's more popular in the northern side, so in the northeastern states and also the Great Lake region. And in the whole country in total, there's just 63 men's D1 teams. And so there's not a lot of options to choose from. But then if your end goal is to enter like schools like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, like ice hockey can maybe get you in those schools. Yeah. And then in the first column, you can see like around how many players from a typical high school team can get into college. And so for lacrosse, that's 3 to 4. Baseball and ice hockey, that's the top 2 to 3. And so you can estimate your chances by looking at how your high school team performs in like regional games. Like if your high school is a typical like school with like average grades or so, then 3 to 4 and 2 to 3 is the number. And if your high school is doing really well, like winning a lot of the regional games and going to nationals, then maybe you're like this number, you can add a little. And then if your high school is not doing as well, then minus a little bit, like go down a little with these numbers. But yeah, you can estimate your chances by looking at how your high school team performs and then how you yourself perform on your team. All right. And then now let's take a look at the women's top 3. And then here, same thing, you see a lot of sports for women's. And then the first column, high school girls, second column, college women player, and third column, D1 women players. And then here's the percentage, and then here's the college and D1 odds. And so in total, a little bit over 8% of US high school girls would continue their sport in college, and a little over 2% would continue to play in NCAA D1 schools. And then looking at the women's top 3, the top 3 are ice hockey, lacrosse, and soccer. And so first is ice hockey. So ice hockey has a very high chance compared with all the other sports, men and women alike, very high chance of getting into college. It has like 21.51%. It's like 2.7 times the national average. So a lot higher than the national average. And then for D1, the possibility is also very high. It's 2.2 times the national average to enter D1 roster. But same thing with men's ice hockey. Ice hockey is just generally like more popular in the northern side of the country. And so you have very limited school choices, only 39 D1 schools D1 teams to choose from. But then there's still some like very renowned universities, include Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, Cornell. Yeah. And then this number 2 is the lacrosse. So the lacrosse also has a high chance of getting into college and getting into D1. And so it is 1.8 times the national average to enter college, and then 2 times the national average to enter D1 roster. And some universities that have women's lacrosse teams include Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, Princeton, UPenn, Cornell, and Northwestern. And then for number 3 is soccer. So soccer has the most school choices among the women's top 3 sports. Soccer has 1,617 teams in total to choose from. But then again, it does not have a significant advantage if you want to enter D1. The percentage is just 1.1 times the national average. And so if your goal, once again, if your end goal is to enter college and have more options to choose from, and maybe you can choose which state you want to live in and which lifestyle you prefer better, then soccer is a good sport for you to engage in. But then if your end goal is just, I want to get into D1 school, then soccer is maybe not like the most advantageous sport for you to choose. All right. And then in a typical high school team, the top performing 4 to 7 players in ice hockey would continue in college. And then for lacrosse, that's 3 to 4. And then for soccer, that's top 2. And then still you can estimate your chances by looking at how your school's team is performing and also how you yourself is performing in your team. All right. And then one question that I get a lot is a lot of people play tennis, and then people are very curious, like why tennis ranks last on both men's and women's chart. Like here you can see, like tennis is like not even half of the possibility of the national average, like of the average of all of the sports. Like it's not even half. And so like, why is it the hardest sport to play your way into college? So one important reason is international participation. So here you can see the percentage of international players in each sport. And then in different columns, that's like the D1 men, D1 women, D2 men, and D2 women. And so from this chart, you can see like in D1 tennis teams, both men and women, over 60% of the players are international. So that leaves less than 40% of the seats to be taken by Americans. And so the fewer seats there are, the higher like competition you would face. And then same thing with some other sports. So like for tennis, throughout D1 and D2, there's a high international percentage. And then some other sports include like D1 ice hockey, D1 men's soccer, and also D1 women's golf. Yeah, so when the international participation is higher, the competition would be fiercer among US players. All right, and so a recap. So the top 3 sports for men would be lacrosse, baseball, and ice hockey. And the top 3 sports for women are ice hockey, lacrosse, and soccer. And then the way we concluded that they are top 3 is purely statistically. So the higher percentage of the high school players playing in college, like the higher their ranking is in our system. All right, and if you're curious about individual sports, like I know many of you are curious in the sports that you engage in, like feel free to follow our Facebook page for more thorough analyses on each sports that are coming up, and we'll be posting them on Facebook. So if you play lacrosse, if you play baseball, if you play tennis, and you want to know like exactly how you should prepare like in each age stages, and also like what you can expect when applying for college, follow our Facebook page for more information. All right. And then let's take a look at the case studies. All right, so the people who actually got in to Ivy League schools, like how good are they? All right, so the first person I wanted to show you is Stephanie Hall. So she is a Harvard women's lacrosse athlete, and yeah, she's originally from Maryland. And then if you want to give her a keyword, it would be well-rounded. She is a well-rounded person. So in high school, Stephanie earned athletic recognition as a lacrosse player. So she was a 4-year letter winner at her high school, and she also served as the captain of her team in 2019. She was also qualified and participated in U.S. Lacrosse All-American. And then in addition to lacrosse, she was also a varsity soccer player. So she has a second sport. She also participated in many high school clubs and with many interests, including chemistry, entrepreneurship, that's business, and tour guide. And then she demonstrated leadership by with her experiences as the cross team captain and also as her school club president. And she showed a lot of compassion because she's done a lot of volunteer work in several different groups to support hunger and also poverty. And she also achieved high academic grades. So she has a 4.21 GPA in Holton Arms School. So here you can see she did well as a lacrosse player. She had a second sport. She participated in a lot of clubs, has leadership positions, showed compassion, and was doing well academically. She is a well-rounded candidate, and she got into Harvard. All right, and then the second person I wanted to show you is Rose Zhang, and she received full scholarship at Stanford. And so if you want to say like one word about her, like one word conclusion about her, that would be professional. Like she is very high achieving in her professional field as a golf player. And so some of her experiences include all of these, like she's won team champion, 2 times individual champion, and a lot of awards, a lot of golfer of the year. And then these 3 in red are her achievements in high school. And so you can see in college, she was the first woman to win the NCAA individual title twice, the first woman to do it. And then she was also recognized as the best US female college golfer twice. And then in high school, like this is in high school, she was recognized as the global #1 golfer. And that's probably why she got into Stanford. And also in May this year, when she's still just 20-year-old, she became the first player in 72 years to win her first LPGA Tour event. And this is huge because this is a pro level experience, and she won it on her first try. And so here you can see Rose Zhang is very professional in her sport, which is golf. All right. And then the third person I want to introduce is Connor Lee. And so Connor Lee is a huge record breaker, and he also has a broad interest in many different fields. And so his strengths, he studies cognitive science and software engineer outside of being a swimming and diving athlete. He also has a wide range of interests in high school. He showed interest in aerospace, robotics, computer science, and psychology. He also got very good grades. He has a 4.07 grade point average, and he's won a lot of athletic recognition. He broke 8 state level and school level records. He was a Phillips National Championships qualifier, and he was also in the Olympic trials. So here you can see he did really well in his sport, swimming and diving. He had good academic grades, and he also showed a lot of interest and curiosity in different fields of study. And then he got admitted into Yale. All right, and so the key takeaway from the case studies of these 3 athletes engaging in 3 different sports who got admitted by 3 different Ivy League schools, some very important thing that they all had is athletic excellence. So you really have to excel in your sport. And then also strong academics, like your high school grades and just like how you do in school need to be among the top. And you also should show a wide range of experience and interests. All right. And so that is the end of our webinar. And so before we open the floor to questions, remember to follow our Facebook page for more exclusive information. So I would be posting some analyses on the individual sports that folks are interested in. And also there would be analyses on how to choose middle school and high school. And then for our webinar playback and also polls, it would be on our Facebook. We would open up, or actually I think we have opened up a poll for what should the next webinar, what should we talk about in our next webinar? And then you can all, you're all welcome to go and vote for whether we should talk about group sports, team sports, or individual sports. And if you have a particular interested topic, say if you really want to hear about gymnastics, you can also leave a comment under the poll. All right, and you can ask your questions in the chat box. And if you came up with even more questions after this webinar, you can also just directly message us on Facebook, and then someone will get the message to me, and then I will get back to your question. All right, and now I'm gonna look at the chat messages. All right. All right, let me see. So the slides, well, we're gonna share the key data and also the playback on our Facebook page. So remember to follow that. Do I have the number of girls? Yes. Yes, I do. All right, let's see. Do all D1, 2, 3 schools play all NCAA sports? All right, so the D1, D2, D3 schools, they would have some teams in the NCAA sports, but then they would participate in a few of those. They wouldn't have all 20 or 30 or so sports teams. Yeah. And then why is ice hockey so high in both? Okay, so it's very likely that it is because the total number of high school ice hockey athletes is not that high. And also because ice hockey is a highly skilled, all of the sports are highly skilled, but then just in total, there's not as many high school players. And so and then for the top schools, they also all have ice hockey teams. And so the percentage of getting in is pretty high. Yeah, GPA 4.2. Yeah, it's pretty high. What is a good age to start the cross? Yes, okay, so this is a very specific question. And then follow our Facebook. It would be in a article that's possibly coming up this week or next week. Yeah. Why the second sport helps college application? Oh, good question. So one reason that having a second sport helps with college application is especially if you participate in one team sport and one individual sport, the college's admissions officer would believe that you have a very well-rounded ability or just personality in say teamwork for team sports, and also a just personal achievement for individual sports. And so because different sports would nurture different characteristics, and so admissions officers really look highly upon that. All right, and then squash. Yes, I see squash. Do we have WeChat group instead of Facebook? Yeah. All right. Yeah, for folks who don't have Facebook, you can add teacher Judy's WeChat at JudyThink2022. What minimum level a student athlete has to have for an elite college? Any example about a relatively average student? Okay, good question. So for like just going back to the Harvard statistics, ooh, way back. All right, so here, this is an internal investigation of like Harvard's admissions data. So like all of the numbers come from like Harvard's like officials. So you can expect the numbers to be accurate. And so here, like previously I talked about like athletes versus non-athletes with high academic scores. And then a very good question is, what if I'm doing like averagely academic wise? Like what if I'm just an average student at school? And so the same finding, like in the same report, it shows that athletes would have over 50% chance of being admitted, while non-athletes, that would be less than 10%. So there's still a very big difference between athletes and non-athletes for medium doing academic like students. All right. Yeah, like I see 2 people mention squash, right? Yeah, we would have a detailed sharing later on our Facebook page. Yeah, we would be posting that on our Facebook page. And if you don't have Facebook, just add Judy's WeChat at JudyThink2022. All right, how about fencing? Good question. Yes, we are going to produce a detailed introduction of fencing, like when to start preparing, the different types of fencing, like what type of fencing which school has, and then what you should expect when a fencing student athlete apply for college. All right. All right, and then, wait, I lost track of the chats. All right, and then is the cross an Olympic sport? So a short answer is it's coming back. How about international students playing in high school team? So for the international participation page, way back. Yeah, for the international participation page, this percentage talks about international students in total. And so like for the international students who are playing in the high school team, you would refer to this chart, like to see which type of sport has more like international participation percentage. How about figure skating? All right, so the NCAA does not recognize figure skating as a sport, like it's not in the NCAA's chart. And so like if you play figure skating, you're not going to apply for NCAA schools with the sport. But then still figure skating is a very highly skilled sport, and college admissions officers would value that in your college application. It's just that you wouldn't go through the athlete application portal. And how about Kung Fu? Same thing with figure skating. It is not recognized by NCAA as a varsity sport. And so you wouldn't be applying as an athlete. But then if you put that in your resume and also in your past experiences, the admissions officers would look at it and evaluate you accordingly. And if your school does not have a team, but there is club, would you still have a like advantage in application? So yes, like schools do not require you to be in a high school team to qualify, like to in order for you to be a student athlete. And so like joining club, actually many student athletes would have like joined club in the past before they applied for college, because clubs offer like training. It also offers game and competition chances for you to engage in. And so yes, like short answer is yes, you would still be able to apply as a student athlete. what is considered an athlete? Okay, good question. And so what is considered an athlete? Like you would have to register for an eligibility center profile, and then you would have to have certain experiences as a player in either competitions or games or tournaments in order to be considered as a student athlete. How the college evaluates athletes playing group sports. So yeah, so how they evaluate athletes playing group sports would be they would look at like what the sport is and then how good you are in the sport. And then they would also like look at how good you are academically and also what other experiences you have. So here you can see like in the top schools, the athletes all have experience in many different fields, including like business clubs and then sports. They're doing well academically. They would also have volunteer activities. And so colleges really value a well-rounded student profile. And so, yeah, basically that's how college evaluates athletes. How about table tennis? Table tennis is not in the NCAA recognized sports, but then same thing, it is a sport, so colleges would evaluate accordingly. How about playing Go? Same thing, it is not a recognized sport in NCAA, but yeah, you can still put that in your non-athlete college application. All right. And now I think I've gone through all of the question. If I missed your question, feel free to send it again in the chat. All right, how about swimming and gymnastics? All right, I'm gonna put that down. And then, yeah, we're gonna produce individual articles talking about these individual sports. All right. Do you have to identify somewhere in college application? Yes, so it's not really just self-identification that you need. If you want to apply as an athlete, you also need to register for an NCAA or NAIA eligibility center profile page. And so once you register on the eligibility center and you pass all the eligibility tests, including your core courses, and then your high school grades, and also your past game and tournament performances, you would be identified as an athlete on those eligibility center website. And that is how coaches would recognize you as a student athlete. Ice hockey is high in national and international, but tennis is not. Yeah, that's a really good question. So ice hockey is high on both international and national chart because there are fewer people in total playing the sport in high school. While tennis, there is a very large applicant pool. A lot of people play tennis, and so only the really high performing ones would get it. All right. I think I covered all of the questions. And if there's anything else, just feel free to message. All right, or you're welcome, guys. How can I reach out to you? Okay, if you want to reach out to me, just direct message Think Academy US on Facebook. And yeah, you can just message the Facebook page with your question, and then the person will get to me, and then we'll get back to you. And if you don't have Facebook, then yeah, then just add Teacher Judy on her WeChat, and then you can send your question to her. Can I talk about soccer in the future? Yeah, I gotcha. All right, I'm gonna take the note down, and then we are going to consider that in our future webinar. And Kelly, also feel free to go on Facebook. We have a poll on it. We would mainly look at the poll result to decide what we're going to talk about in future webinars. And so the first post on Facebook right now should be the poll, like the team sport, individual sport, and then you want us to talk about soccer, just leave a comment, soccer, that's it. And then yeah, we will do that in the future. All right. Are there any other questions? You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, if there's no more question, we would end this webinar right now. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. And if you still have more questions, just DM us on Facebook and then someone will get back to you real fast. All right. Thank you all for listening. Let me see. I'm gonna stop sharing. And then, yeah. Thank you guys. Bye.